My name is Caitlin Bigsby. I'm a product marketing director at Visier. But prior to Visier, I spent a good 15 years in the HR consulting space. So I have worked very closely with a number of HR professionals and got to other their struggles near and dear to my heart. And today I am actually going to talk about how to unblock your diversity strategy with design thinking and people analytics. This is also something that's near and dear to my heart. I've become a huge fan of design thinking over the years, and of course, diversity and inclusion. What's not to feel good about there? Clearly, this is a topic that has come to the forefront more recently, and with more intensity, I think, than we have felt in the past. And a lot of organizations are really scrambling to put out public-facing statements about what they intend to do. There's a ton of research available now talking about how improving your diversity and your leadership actually leads to improved business performance, and just general conversations about promoting the growth of diverse workers. But simply paying, talking about the sort of genuine nice reasons for doing this. There's also a lot of really compelling reasons. The bed is on fire. The executives need to do something about it here. The fact is that it's simply not enough to make public statements. You need to be seen as taking action. The public is simply not willing to take empty promises anymore. And also, this is a really big area of risk for executives. What you don't know can't hurt you, and executives are feeling that every day. And boards are becoming increasingly more comfortable letting executives go to sort of make up for a scandal. So this is really about really preserving executive jobs as well as the performance of the organization, to really take clear action on diversity and inclusion. Sadly, however, most organizations, just 32% are making any progress, and the organizations in that 32% have really taken aggressive action. So this number actually is worse than it is. Those that have made progress are the ones who really, really tried hard. Everybody else is staying stagnant or falling behind. And again, the risks are real. We have, some lawsuits right now. Nike, Google, Walmart. In my research, I found, a lawsuit from Oracle that, fun fact, I actually could have qualified for had I stayed at Oracle. 60% of the American public are now making buying decisions based on the public persona of a company. So again, you can have one scandal and 24 hours later, your business can just tank. There simply is no room to not take actual progress on D&I anymore. But like I said, we've been talking about this for ages. This is not new. So why is it proving to be so hard? Probably the biggest reason is that in order to make any progress, it needs to be a top-down. It needs to be buy-in from senior leadership, and senior leadership is predominantly, of course, made up of a population known as the majority males in some research. And while publicly they might commit to these things, they might fervently believe in the promise of diversity and inclusion, but when you get to brass tacks, when you talk about doing something different, they're going to prioritize other things because there's just no skin in the game for them. So without really getting the leadership on board in a real way, you're just not going to make any progress. The other problem we have really is that the perception of the problem is out of alignment from reality. We have a good sense of the numbers in the abstract, in the academic, but when it comes to an individual manager, let's say, it's all too easy to say, not my problem. I just keep hiring people who look like me because that's what's out there. So again, there's really not a sense of what's real anymore. And finally, a lot of the solutions that get trotted out when there is an initiative around D&I are one-size-fits-all approach, training or processes designed to eliminate bias. And in fact, these processes have actually been shown to make things worse and entrench negative attitudes. So it just has been slightly out of reach for any organization that isn't really choosing to focus on it. This is a problem that really needs to be understood to be solved. We need to understand what's driving diversity issues. We need to create custom targeted interventions designed to work for that organization, not just in general. And we need to make everybody accountable for success. So this brings me to the design thinking. For those who don't know, I'm sure most people attending are familiar with it. Design thinking is a philosophy, a problem-solving philosophy designed for wicked problems. So wicked problems are those that are kind of, we're aware of them, but they're ill-defined and tricky is the big one. And maybe they feel just too big to tackle in any way. Design thinking is intended to sort of break the problem down, clarify what can be done, the questions behind it, and then to collaborate on solutions that could be put into place and measuring the results. So I'm sure it's quite easy to see when you look at the definition like this, why analytics is, of course, the perfect partner when embarking on a design thinking initiative for D&I. So at its heart, I categorize that two sides to design thinking: finding the right question and finding the right solution. And we're talking about design thinking for HR. Finding the right question has three big steps. One is clarifying the opportunity and the goals. Two is understanding the wants and needs of employees. And finally, identifying the trends behind the problem. These three steps are really important, I think, to help transform HR into a real transactional, kind of reactive function into a more proactive and strategic function. So marrying, yes, we're talking about people. Yes, we need to understand what drives their behavior every day, but also looking at the data and making decisions based on that. And finally, finding the right solution. Once we have found the right question, what is the solution for that question? That involves collaboration to come up with some diverse solutions and options, putting those solutions into action, and then finally monitoring the results. So let's look at each of these in a little bit more detail, starting with finding the right question. And that is to clarify the opportunities and goals. Again, when we look at diversity and inclusion as a monolith, it seems just massive, both small and massive. We need to increase, our women by X% and minorities by X%, but that actually doesn't give us any sense of how to go about it. It doesn't tell us, why our numbers are low as to begin with. So we need to actually break it down into smaller chunks. Is our problem in senior leadership and women because either we're not attracting them or they're not staying? How do we bring new hires in? Are we actually attracting enough diverse applicants in order to meet new hire initiatives? And what would be a reasonable goal to set there? Back to the beginning, a lot of companies are making public statements about what they hope to achieve with diversity and inclusion numbers. Great to make those public statements, even better to make them realistic statements that you can then announce your progress against them and hopefully even overachieve them. So setting realistic goals is also really, really important. And so to do that, of course, we start with data. We take a look at our baseline numbers, aggregate at the organization, but even better to start to look in and slice and dice it by organization, by job, by manager, by location, and start to look at where you can improve. Location is really important. It's a lot of organizations talk about wanting to reflect the community around them. So getting a sense of what the community around them looks like versus what their organization looks like can help them set realistic goals that they can meet. Next is understanding wants and needs of your employees. So not all data, but data can certainly play a part here. So you could use a active listening app, you could use surveys or just regular interviews. But the idea is to actually connect with people who are living the life and start to connect what you're seeing in the data to what people are actually experiencing. So it's not just anecdotes or just data, it's a little bit of both. Anecdotes can give you an idea of where to investigate. They can also flesh out maybe some of what you're seeing in the data. Empathy is incredibly important when you're connecting. People need to feel like something is going to happen and that you're going to be receptive to the feedback. And then hopefully the output of all this is the ability to identify the big moments that matter. Sometimes we know the obvious ones, like our first week, our hire date, maybe a manager change or a reorg. But it's in talking to employees that we can maybe uncover some other events or actions that can have an impact on how they feel at the organization. Really, if you can put a D&I lens on every part of the employee experience and get a sense of maybe an area where you can improve or do something different. It occurs everywhere from where you're looking for candidates. Are you looking at traditional minority colleges or just some of the big names? Is your hiring process unbiased and fair? And that can go right to, who is receiving your applicants at the front door? Is that somebody who is creating a welcoming atmosphere or is it leading to people dropping out of the process? Do people feel connected and like they're contributing? Do they feel like they're part of the big decisions in the organization? People said this big driver behind employee satisfaction is feeling like you're making an impact and that you matter. Finally, want to look at the trends behind the problem, and that kind of involves following the thread when you spot something interesting, when you spot a discrepancy, maybe pulling at that thread to see what's driving it. For example, if minority groups aren't moving into management, well, are they getting opportunities to participate in stretch projects or the training that might lead to management or the kinds of shifts that would lead to management? That's actually one of the factors in the lawsuit against Walmart, is that women were shut out of some of the prime shifts and opportunities that would ultimately lead to management. So, pull at that thread, do some exploring, and you'll be able to find some of what's driving it. When it comes to working with the data, trend reports are really helpful. Driver charts can give you a sense of what clusters of activities or events or traits go together when you're looking at, say, risk of exit, for example. Another way of looking at things might be to examine cohorts over time. One of the features that Visier just rolled out in our last release is the ability to create a cohort at any point in time. So, for example, I could create a cohort of male managers hired in 2016 and female managers hired in 2016 and track them over time to look at their progression of their career, their exit rate, and so on. And that might be another way to look at some patterns and trends in the system. And finally, segmenting the population is really critical. Again, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. Particularly, I think when we're talking about diversity, the whole nature of diversity is different backgrounds, different experiences. So it might mean that something that one group is experiencing is not being experienced by another group, or it's being experienced in a different way. So really looking at kind of what defines that group can help you, again, understand the pattern. Now let's talk about finding the right solution. Once you have a really good understanding of your opportunity and the reasons behind it, it's so much easier to start to look at a solution that makes sense. The best way to, of course, come up with diverse solutions is to partner with other people. With diverse voices leads to diverse solutions. And actually, out of all the D&I interventions, that almost all of them don't work, except creating diversity task force made up of people across the board. So that's very similar here, to bring in sort of a task force of people, distribute the data to them. So once the opportunities are identified, the drivers are identified, the contributing factors, create an analysis that sort of explains what's going on, what's understood to this team so that they can explore it, understand it, and maybe even investigate their own hunches a little bit. Everybody's got thoughts about what's behind things, and then start to ideate, just throw out ideas about how this could be approached. So when you talk about collaborating on the solutions, that means really take people through the story of what you found. We know in your role as people analytics professionals that it's not simply enough to say, here's a chart, hope you understand it. It's important to kind of step them through what you looked at, what led to what led you to that conclusion. And then that's the same here. Where did you start? How did it lead you here? Some context about what they're looking at, what this particular turnover number means versus that one. So really give some good background. But once they've got it, their ability to explore it themselves, this can lend them to a greater understanding, greater buy-in. It's also a good way to spread across the organization the real numbers of what's happening, and stop people from kind of hiding behind the aggregate. Take those solutions and put them into action. That's the next big step, of course, is actually doing something. Insight without action is overhead, I believe a famous PAFOW speaker once said. And it's no different here. But the big difference, of course, is once you've enacted them, you have the baselines, you have the measures, you know what you expect to see. So you can actually create some dashboards to see what's happening, both within your working groups and to share up to the executive so everybody can monitor, and to create some accountability with the people who need to change. But by measuring the results, you can add value to the programs. You have the opportunity to say, hey, this is working really well, let's expand it, or this is not quite working the way we expected, let's adjust it. But it's to really target your resources and make the best use of it. So thoughtful changes with dashboards that can be shared for across the board with executive and task force members is really critical. And acting on results, like I said, expand or correct and keep going. So what is your role as people analytics professionals? I'm sure some of you are sitting here going, hey, that's cool, but it's not my mandate. The fact is, I hope I made clear that D&I simply is not going to be successful without you, without your involvement, without your expertise, and without the support you can provide. It cannot be done without insight into the numbers and timely, trusted insight. These aren't questions that we can wait weeks or months to get. We need to get them quickly, and we need to be trusted them. The people who are being served this information, of course, aren't analytics professionals, so they need to be served to them in a way that they understand and that they can interact with, and to monitor so that they can improve over time. So humbly suggest that you would consider pre-built analytics for a solution like this. Luckily, the same kind of data that is needed for D&I is needed for everything in HR. So if you can take advantage of the pre-built analytics, you'll be able to get going in a matter of weeks, send dashboard monitorings out to the inboxes of managers. You don't even need to let them into the system right away. You can deliver it right to their inbox. But eventually you can expand that to secure self-service access for all users. So people are only seeing what they should see, and really start to expand usage. And you can expand it to the other areas. And what this does too is it increases the value to the people analytics administrators by providing a source of data to be used downstream for bespoke analytics, and also by taking some of the weight off of you to meet those constant demands for insights that can be served by self-service analytics. So it's really critical for your team to get involved and that you have the right tool set to be able to support it. But the combination between design thinking and people analytics is absolutely an incredible untapped potential to make a difference. Our own research at Visier has shown that people analytics has an actual difference. Our customers do see results in hard numbers, and we have research reports to show it. So thank you very much for your time and for listening. We hope you visit the Visier booth. Happy to share some of our research with you. It's a lot of it put together by our next speaker, Lexi Martin, who is a fabulous HR researcher. And I hope you stick around to hear what she has to say along with Wayfair. Thank you.
Caitlin, always fantastic to hear you talk and share what is going on there. Just a quick few questions before we head over to Lexi.
Sure.
Dylan. Is that obviously we're in this situation with COVID and uncertainty around where organizations are going in terms of their financial health, where their workforce is going to be in terms of right sizing. Are they going to lay off? Are they going to be hiring? It seems to be all over the map, depending on industry. Tech seems to be more resilient. Other industries, obviously, retail has been suffering, and so there's all this happening. Meanwhile, as we've long discussed, there are people analytics teams that have done really well in terms of their effectiveness during this crisis because HR and people analytics specifically had the data, and particularly those who had a solution like Visier in-house, they were able to adapt and respond. And particularly, I want to give kudos to Visier as an organization because you took a leadership role in putting out content and tools to help organizations respond. So thank you on behalf of the community for that. So my pointed question is that here we are, it's not like a new normal. I don't think anyone really likes that term because it's just a perpetual disruption, as I like to say more often than not. And so when does this become a priority to adopt a solution like Visier? Because for me, it's like, and I know you're not here to sell, but if we have DE&I, prominent issue, we have COVID prominent issue. If I don't have the data, my choices are go out there and put everything in Excel or something like that and try and build it on my own. Or, hey, here's an organization that's done 90% of the work, and now I can plug my data in here and start visualizing and getting things done, as opposed to struggling putting everything together. So, what do you say to get folks understanding that they don't have to work as hard, that they can actually get where they want to go, with some help?
So what I would say, first of all, this is actually a really good time to approach your CIO about a cloud solution. A lot of CIOs are looking to invest more in cloud because of the predictability of the price and whatnot.
Hmm.
So it's actually a really good time for that. But what I would say too is that this is about scaling, and it's also about proving value. CFOs, on the other hand, are examining every single dollar spent, and they're looking for the value out of it. We had analytics had a great showcase of value during the COVID response. But if we want to carry that through, we need to continue to show that value, and you're going to get a lot of value faster with a cloud solution in place. And again, show your own team. It's not a threat to your own team, because what it lets you do is do more, provide more insight, more actions, more suggestions, and still do that bespoke analytics. We're not trying to say don't do analytics on your own, because we can't do everything. That's the nature of Prebuilt. But I think if you want to continue that momentum and really show your value long term, this is an excellent opportunity to do it, because you'll be able to keep your profile high, keep yourself in front of the executive with the value that you provide.
And because right now we're in this place where the data that we might want to consume and analyze and visualize might not reside within the enterprise. It might be from outside the enterprise. And I know you've worked with partners to actually bring in data to add context to that internal data. Is that right? And can you speak to that value proposition?
Oh, for sure. So, Visier is, we have space for a lot of additional data, whether it's from partners. MZ spoke before me, of course, and we're working with them. They've amazing options that they've got. We partner with TrustSphere to bring in that sentiment data, and the network connectivity. So we were able to layer in that data. And when it's with our partners, the integration, of course, is that much easier. But we also have a lot of overlays that just make room, for your finance data, for your productivity data. Imagine being able to say, when 2 hours of overtime is the maximum amount before we start to see productivity dipping at the individual level. And that's something that we can offer. So we can bring in all of that together. We can let your finance officers really see who are our most productive employees or our productive groups. And so that's incredibly valuable, because people are the engine for everything, but that information we have from them is completely cut off. So being able to pull it all in makes so much sense and provides so much value.
Yeah, no, I agree. And having been in the space for a number of years, I have to say this. I am pleasantly surprised at how you've taken this space to, frankly, a new level. And I only say that out of respect, because I've seen you all as an organization grow, and from a very virtuous, kind, well-intentioned place. So yeah, again, thank you for doing what you do and how you do it. Any closing comments before we go to break and then bring Lexi on?
No, I said just visit our booth. Cheryl's getting lonely over there, but she's got some really incredible research papers that I think will blow your mind and help you make the case if this is something that you're interested in. But definitely stick around for Lexi and talking to Wayfair.